Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Fantasy Sports. I'm going to be doing something a little different today than I've been doing the past couple weeks. Obviously, I've been focusing a little more on the NFL season, and with the recent start of the NBA season, obviously having a fantasy draft, having been able to look at the past couple weeks with, at least 6 or 7 games played for each team, I want to talk about what I look at as the top 10 teams right now in the NBA. I think next week I should focus a little more on my fantasy team. They're not doing too hot. Just a couple bad picks, and I'll start with saying I did draft Miles Bridges. I know many of you are going to be thinking, what was your thought process? I did not know Miles Bridges was suspended for 30 games, and obviously, had I known that, I probably wouldn't have drafted him as early as I did. I think along with that, taking Jordan Poole a little early might have been a fault by thinking that he would just be putting up mad fantasy points on, a team that's not good, but clearly the team is not good, so he's not playing good. With all that said, though, I really want to get into this. I really want to talk about the top 10 teams. I would go through the all 32, but I feel like that's kind of beating a dead horse because you know who's good and who's not. But I think the best way to attack this is looking at the teams right now that are in a winning position and it look like they'll be winding up in the playoffs or the NBA Finals. So I want to start with number 1, which is, for me, just clearly the Boston Celtics. I think at this point with their starting 5, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kristaps, they have the plus 373 net rating so far this season. Obviously, with only them being on the court together 72 minutes, it's a kind of short time frame to compare them to other teams. But with their 5-1 record, it's just impressive what they've been able to do. They're pretty much the best team in points per possession on defense when it comes down to who they're playing. And obviously, they haven't played fantastic teams, but when it comes down to it, they've been, winning every game by a large margin. Obviously, we saw that Pacers game where they wound up winning by 50. So, at the end of the day, in offensive terms and in defensive terms, I would say they're probably top 5 offensive team. And if not the 1 or 2 with the Timberwolves, I think right now being the best defensive team, I think they're not 1 or 2 when it comes down to the starting 5 being together and on the court. And I think the biggest factor about this is their starting 5. Obviously, adding Drew Holiday is adding one of the best point guard defenders and arguably better than Marcus Smart, although Marcus Smart won the Defensive Player of the Year. It's a good argument that Drew Holiday is the best defensive point guard or guard right now in the league. And looking at it from an aspect of Jaylen Brown, who also is a really good defensive guard, and Derek White, who's also a good defensive player, and then having Kristaps and Jason Tatum kind of be the floor generals when it comes down to what they're doing on offense and not really focusing too much on defense is a big thing for them. So I'm definitely excited to see where they go, though I'm not a Celtics fan. The number 2 team, and I think this is really close for being number 1, is the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, you see a team like the Denver Nuggets come out and go 7-1. It's a team that you expect to be good. They look really, really good. The Nuggets are getting outscored 4.3 possessions per 100 possessions, and it's not ideal because right now with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic on the field or on the court, they have a minus 9.9 plus minus efficiency rating when it comes down to what's going on. And I think that's a big thing for them because that's down 5% from last season when they were playing in the regular season. Obviously in the playoffs it was much different because it was really high. But looking at it, I think the biggest thing for this team so far has been how well they've played as a team and how well they've played together. I think looking at it, they've been putting, Reggie Jackson in a bigger role. They've had Nikola Jokic kind of taking a second seat with Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray being way better on offense. I think it's really interesting to see what they've been doing in terms of defense, just because it's not their strong suit, but they've been doing really good on it. Michael Malone has said that more or less they've been focusing on transition defense, and I think one of the biggest things for them is just getting on top of the ball when they get out in transition. A majority of times it's one player back, like Aaron Gordon having to defend 2 people, and you see these people just not running down the court. And I know it's something as small as that, but when you win a game and you keep winning games, eventually it's going to catch up to you when a team just continually beats you on the break. But as of right now, they're 7-1. Obviously there's not a lot to say about why they're negative. There's not much negative to talk about. And I would say, Nikola Jokic or Luka Doncic is the number 1 or 2 when it comes to MVP. Then for number 3, this is debatable. Obviously, the Philadelphia 76ers have looked really strong without James Harden. Tyrese Maxey has taken that insane step, averaging almost over 25 points a game. Joel Embiid is playing at an elite level, averaging over 30 points a game. And Nicholas Batum is playing very, very well with that team. And I know how stupid it is to talk about a player such as Nicholas Batum, but it's little things like that. I also think Nick Nurse, being the coach, has changed a lot. I think he's thrusted this young core or young player into a role to offense or to facilitate the offense, and it's been really working. Tobias Harris has also been having an exceptional season in all the stats, field goal percentage, three-point percentage, both points and assists. So it's something that is to watch, because it seems as though Nick Nurse has always been good at using his forwards. Even when he was on the Raptors, Scotty Barnes and OG always played very, very well. Although Scotty had a poor season last year, you could just see he knows how to really use his players, and I think that's the best thing about Nick Nurse and why it sucks that he's not there. Obviously, I love the new hire with the Raptors, but I do miss Nick Nurse in terms of what he brought as a coach, bringing us our first championship and everything. But 76ers looking really good, with the bright spot being Tyrese Maxey, and I'm excited to see where they go. At number 4 and 5, this is close for me. I had them kind of tied, but I think at this point it's easier to say with record-wise. The Mavericks have one less loss. The Mavericks, I put it 4. Grant Williams has never had open looks like this, and he's taking extreme advantage. Luka Doncic is playing extremely well on the ball and off the ball. He's averaging 6.6 three-pointers a game and hitting 54% of them, which is something he hasn't done in his entire career. And I think he's a really good fit for this team. I think a lot of people underrate how good Grant Williams was for the Celtics and how good he is as a player. The Mavericks have won 6 of their won 5 in a row, lost 1. And I think one of the biggest key aspects of this has been the addition of the rookie center and the addition of Grant Williams. Kyrie Irving is playing good, but Luka Doncic and as well as the 2 forwards in the center have been playing extremely well, while Kyrie is just there to kind of be Kyrie. And I think that's the best thing that they're doing in this offense, letting Luka be Luka, letting Kyrie be Kyrie, and letting everyone else around them understand their roles and why they're on that team to support the 2 guards that are pretty much the focus of the team. And that's why I have them at 4. I just think their team as a whole has been very good. And although Jason Kidd isn't my favorite coach, he's been doing very good with what he has on offense. Number 5, as I said, the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, Stephen Curry's putting together a pretty much quiet MVP season, as he always does. He has 73 true shooting percentage, averaging 30.9 points, and he is pretty much up 8% on his career shooting percentage, or true shooting percentage, which is usually around like 67, 66. They're 5-1 on the road, which is a huge leap from last year, because they were 11-30 away from the Chase Center. But they have some tough games coming up. They have Denver, Cleveland, Timberwolves, Thunder. Obviously, they gave them some problems, Thunder, last time. But I think they're a very good team, the Thunder. And I think with that being said, it's not a doubt that the Warriors are better, but it's just whether or not the Thunder can take that leap. But a lot to see from Steph Curry, and I've been really liking what I see out of Klay. He's looking very solid. Not too much about the other players. Looney has been looking very, very good as well. I know it's one of those things where it's an underrated player doing just all the dirty work and stuff that people don't realize, but him, averaging like 15 boards a game, being down in the paint, constantly just being one of those focal points on defense and, offense, both rebounding wise, is super important. And then number 6, in my opinion, the best defensive team right now is the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards is looking like the best player. He's having 28.2 points a game. He has 4.8 assists. He's shooting 47% from 3. And Minnesota is 25.6 points better per 100 possessions when he's on the court. Obviously, the Timberwolves handed losses to the 2 top teams, Nuggets and the Celtics, and they've been doing most of their damage at home. Although they're 4-2, they've lost 2 on the road. They look like one of the best complete defensive teams, and that's with Karl Anthony Towns not even playing that good. And I think when he starts getting his step back, because he hasn't gotten it back right now, but having Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, and Karl Anthony Towns is just a really solid team. Having those 2 players down low is extremely vital for not offense but for defense as well. So it's definitely exciting to see a team like this take the step after hearing all about Anthony Edwards in the offseason with the USC FIBA World Cup team. And then number 7, I have the Hawks. They're pretty bad, record right now. They're 4-3. It's not impressive, and I know they haven't had a fast start. But Quinn Snyder's finally showing off like the depth of this team with DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Dejounte Murray, Sadiq Bey. They're all averaging at least 15. Jalen Johnson right now is averaging 15. DeAndre Hunter at 14.5 and Dejounte Murray at 21.5. With Sadiq Bey, who has struggled with the shot, obviously, but has been able to average above 10 points at this point. I think their hot streak can continue. Obviously, they had a couple losses to start off the season, a couple brutal losses, but they're looking really good. And as for number 8, I think this is the same kind of thing. They had a tough start, the OKC, but they're 4-0 against the Eastern Conference, 0-3 against the West, although they did play without Shai against the Warriors. And, they didn't have the best of the games starting-wise in the other ones. But Lucas Dort has been playing really, really good. He is shooting 51.3% of his three-pointers, and Chet Holmgren has been playing as the rookie people thought he was going to be. So I think it's definitely interesting to watch what they can do for the rest of the season and what they can continue to do. A majority of the reason I don't have the OKC as high is just because they're young, and I think they're a really good team. I really like their offense. I like Shai, I like Josh. I really like Chet. And Jalen Williams has taken that step, but I think the biggest thing holding them back right now is spacing. They look weak against these tough teams that know how to play defense against teams that aren't really fluent with understanding switches, understanding defensive sets. And not that these players aren't playing at the best level, but when you get thrown a curveball by a top team with some of the best defenders, it's definitely something to think about. And this is something that I fought really hard with for my 9 and 10 spot. But I think right now it's just a certain way the teams are playing and the teams' rosters. I have the Bucks at 9 and I have the Pacers at 10, but I really wanted to switch it at one point. Tyrese Halliburton is playing extremely good. He's averaging 24 points and 12 rebounds a game. Obviously, we know what he could do with the ball in his hand, assisting. And they're top 10 standing in this ranking just because the 25 defensive ranking is a concern. But on offense, they're pretty much the second best offense in the league right now when it comes down to what they're doing, points per possessions, points per game, 3 points attempts and makes per game. So it's definitely interesting to see. But I have them at number 10. And then number 9, I have the Bucks, 4-2. I think they're very much a work in progress team. They have a negative 6.2 rating when both Dame and Giannis are on the team. And I think the biggest concern for them right now is their defense. You have Brook Lopez, who is arguably the Defensive Player of the Year, Giannis, who's a great defender. And the loss of Drew Holiday is extremely big for them. I think one of the biggest things for them is looking at what they can do with their roster to better fit the offense and defense when they're on the team. So it's interesting to see what they'll wind up doing. But all that being said, I like these top 10 teams right now. I'm interested to see what the continuation of the season winds up happening. I will wind up talking about the NBA fantasy team that I had last year. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed talking about basketball. I haven't talked about it in a while. I haven't been able to talk about who I like this season, and I think one of my biggest players this season is Luka Doncic. I have him winning MVP. And another big player I have that I've been, back and forth about has been Jalen Williams. I think one of the best things that he brings to the game is just the hustle. It's hustle, and it's the way that he plays the game that is so interesting. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed. And tune in next Wednesday when I talk about my fantasy team that is going to get better. Thank you as always.